Good afternoon. Happy Friday. If you're in Fairbanks, happy snow day, apparently. It's just the life we live. Come on ahead into the Zoom room. Happy Black History Month. If you are new to the Zoom webinar function, that means you do not have to worry about muting and unmuting yourself or dealing with a video. So it just makes it a lot easier for us as panelists and participants to engage in this wonderful conversation. You are, however, welcome to use the chat or the Q&A function. So if you have any questions while we're going through this wonderful conversation, feel free to put them in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen if you hover over. That makes it easier for us to go through and put these things on stacks so we don't miss anyone. And if you want to, introduce yourself in the chat, get a little acquainted with other people that are watching, definitely encourage you. Go ahead and tell us who you are, where you're zooming in from, and in honor of Black History Month, who is your favorite Black leader that has inspired you in your own way? I've seen some more folks file in. Welcome, welcome. We'll get started here in a few minutes, but yeah, go ahead, welcome yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're coming in from and who's a Black leader that has inspired you in your own way.
Alyssa, you want me to get this thing started as far as that question?
Oh, I'm muted. Yeah.
Okay.
Who is your favorite?
I don't have a favorite. I have a conglomerate of individuals, and as a youth, my leaders came at the social level, became at the spiritual level, at the church level. And at the church level, during my time in the late 60s and 70s, a lot of my political information and support and understanding came from the church leaders, not just my particular home church itself, but a conglomerate of different churches that we would attend that with conferences and things like that. And so, and a lot of those individuals from those different churches were also very active in the community, and so we not only had people that understood the political arena, but also they were not just people that were just saying, go fight for this cause or fight for that cause. There were actually people that were on the ground floor that were walking around and doing the talk. And so I got my inspiration from those type of people that were on the school boards. There were principals, there were police officers, they were in the court systems, there were juvenile systems, clergy. So there were a variety of leaders that I got. So I don't have any specific one particular leader because I wasn't around when Frederick Douglass was doing this thing. I wasn't around. I was around with Dr. King, but I didn't understand what was really going on until I became a youth to understand what the principles meant, and to help facilitate those principles. For me to understand even more so came from those leaders in those various church settings that I was involved in as a youth.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a, interesting question for me being, in my 20s and thinking of all who have inspired me. Yeah, well, let's, we still have some people filing in, but, I say let's go ahead and get this conversation rolling. So thank you all to everyone who's joining us here in Zoom world and on Facebook Live. My name is Alyssa Quintyne. I am a community organizer here with the Alaska Center in the Interior. And I am so honored to be joined with so many Black leaders across our state to be holding this wonderful conversation around how we, as communities, allies, coworkers, comrades, really cultivate and invest in Black leadership in our state, and what that looks like for us, and what that all looks like to you as a community and as just fellow neighbors in this world. I have the pleasure to be joined with many different Black leaders in our attendees, but really I want to hold some space for our panelists, and I am just going to pass the mic and have them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Andre, since since you're right here on my screen. If we want to go around and just say who we are, what our role in the community is, what we do, and where we're zooming in from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this format. Thank you for your time. And it's going to take people, continued people like you, and to kind of keep the philosophy of the movement of Dr. King and others way before him. There's a lot of indigenous people in Alaska that, like Elizabeth Putovich, there's different people that have these same philosophies. And so take people like you to kind of keep that going. I'm Aundra Jackson from the Matt Valley, living in Palmer. I'm currently the president of the Matsu MLK Jr. Foundation. I've been in Alaska since 1982, and I've seen various changes come out throughout the state, and especially in the valley. I really got attracted to the valley, more so Anchorage back in, I want to say, 87, and I'm kind of shooting up the clock here. 87, the aura of Alaska was just like, it was a different melting pot. There was a lot of visual racism going on at the time. In fact, there was a Klan rally that was supposed to be planned in Palmer, and the city council rejected it. And that made me say, man, if I ever move to the valley, I'm going to Palmer because I like their mentality. However, just in the last 2 years, that has really changed, especially with the BLM movements and the movement that we had this past summer. Is that I'm not so sure if the attitude of the Palmer City Council would have taken the same as they did in 87. And so I started, wanting to get more involved, not just on the picket line or the marching line, but also dealing with city council and speaking with city council and their various social groups. That marching is fine, but you still got to get off the streets and go where people are making the decisions. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, where the organization is at right now, is to look at the civic issues that are conducive to our people and indigenous people in the community that we serve out here in the valley. Pass it on to.
Yeah, thank you. We'll pass it off to, yeah, go ahead.
All right, so my name is Jasmin Smith, and I am zooming on Denying the Land here in Anchorage. I like to describe myself as a serial entrepreneur and dedicated to all things economic empowerment and entrepreneurship and financial independence. Also, community activist. I love things racial equality, equity, a lot with Black Lives Matter. Nearest thing to my heart, of course, is my kids. I have 6-year-old twins, and I am proud of them and to be their mom. So in all my work that I do, in my business ventures and any of these conversations, I always think about them. So that's definitely my why and my motivating force and reason for everything that I do, is just being a single mom and trying to make sure that I leave something impactful for them in the community. So I love being part of these conversations and seeing everything that's happening from across the state, and just seeing how we can strengthen and build together.
Thank you so much, Jasmin. Sherry, you want to go next?
Hi, my name is Sherry Patterson. I'm from Juneau, Alaska, the capital of our state, and I'm glad to be with you today. I'm got the invite via a couple people, and I'm glad that I was able to jump in. I am here. I'm a 47-year resident of Alaska. Came here as a teenager and decided to stay. And for so many reasons, I love Alaska. And then in '86, my family was, my young family was assigned to Juneau to take care of a church here. And we've been here ever since. So my role here in the community, I wear many hats. Among those hats are president of the Black Awareness Association that was established in 1994. And I am, oh, there are so many things. I'm just very, very well active in our Juneau community. So I am a vocalist. I perform at a lot of events, including at the Governor's Mansion for over the past 6 administrations. So we're talking about 25 years. And so I love what I do here. I want to be impactful. My time is very valuable. I don't do anything just because. I'm deliberate in those things that I choose to do. My goal and our group's goal is to keep our community educated and aware of the Black culture here in the capital city. Sometimes it gets kind of weary. There are very few of us here, and but we have to keep going. And so for the past 8 months, I believe, we have been producing and airing a radio show called Conversations with the Black Awareness, where we every week have guests and we talk about our Black culture coming from many different topics. And so that's what we're doing now. It's very well received. There's a whole lot to me that I'm saying, and I just didn't write a lot of things down, but it's good to be a part of this conversation today. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And last but not least, Ms. Wendy Dominique.
Well, thank you guys ever so much. I really appreciate being here. I love spreading the word about the things I've done in the community. I'm here from Fairbanks, Alaska, the snow state of anywhere. I love being here in Alaska. I've been here for about 31 years now, well, really 32. And it's been a great, I won't say it's always been great, but it has been a pleasure to have served on the school board here for 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And to know that I was the longest serving person on the school board. I've accomplished a lot of things while I was on the school board. And my whole ultimate goal is to educate each and every one of us about our children, to be sure that they get a great education, not just one sector, not just one group, but all children should receive a great education. And if it takes me going back on the board, nope, I'm not saying that. But I will be active always in education because it's important. Our children that are going to school, especially our Black and brown children, they're not understanding what's going on around them. Some of them don't have the parents that we can be for them. So I always speak to young people today and let them know you have to educate your children on your history and let them know where we came from, where we're going to. I have 3 grown children. I feel like I've raised about 10 children because I was like my mom was. She took in all the neighborhood kids. If they didn't have anywhere to go, they came to our house. So that was instilled in me at a very young age that you always take care of others. And that's what I plan to do. But my husband is not like me. He thinks the kids we have are enough and we can help others, but they're not coming in our house and staying for too long of a time. But I just feel like we need to work what we're doing today together. I have 4 grandchildren. I have 1 grandchild in Ireland, and my son is in Ireland. And they were all educated here in the school system here in Fairbanks, and they got a great education. And I will say that again, they got a great education. And I think they would have gotten it with or without me, but I was involved. I stayed involved. I went to their schools on a regular basis. And that's what our young people need to realize. If you go to a school and they tell you you can't come in and sit in the class or whatever the case may be, you need to tell them that's your right. That's your right to be there, so that they know that you're involved. The kids do better. They really do. Even though I had one son that I would go in the front door, he was going out the back door at the school, but he got his education, he got his diploma, and that's what our goal was. So I came here as a military family. My husband was in the military and he got out here, and then I retired from the government, 36 years working with the government.
Wow.
And 17 years on the school board. And so I said that to somebody the other day and said, okay, so what you gonna do now? Nothing, but I'm doing this. And I will always be involved in my community because that's the only way you can make it better. But thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. And now that we have our folks here and it looks like we're a little settled in, I want to take this moment, to really acknowledge all the places that we're coming from here in Alaska, on ancestral and unceded territories of the Chena Dene, Lower Tanana, to the Subiac, to the Tlingit, to Dinaina. Really this conversation, and what I will love to highlight is that this is connection. Why these conversations are important is to connect our communities together, and to really talk about how we honor each other, how we honor the lands that we're on, how we honor our futures together. And so I just want to take a moment to recognize that, and so excited to see so many people from across the state joining us and wanting to be a part of this conversation too. And I hope that you bring what you learn and what inspires you from this roundtable into your own communities, with your own people and your own friends and comrades and coworkers. With that, I want to give our panelists some space to enlighten us on how they got to where they are now. How did you get to the roles that you are in your community, retired or not? Wendy, do you want to start us off?
More than happy to. I got started in mine because of my son, my youngest son. He was my nerd in my family. He was a very intelligent young man, but there was an incident that happened at his school, and I didn't feel like he was being fairly disciplined with it. And I got all the parents together that was involved. There was 6 black young men that was involved in this incident. And I called up each and every one of the parents and told them, what the kids are telling us is the same story, but they told their parents at different times, but the story was the same. But the district was saying something different. So from that incident, I got the parents together. We talked about it. We called the administrators in and we talked about it. And our kids got a much lesser discipline from it. And from that day on, I had people coming to me and saying, oh, you should run for school board. I had no desire to be on the school board. I loved education when I was growing up. I wanted to be a teacher, never made it to a teacher role. So I said, oh, I'll give it a try. 17 years later, that's where I was. And being a community person and making sure everybody gets what they need and things of that nature, that came from my mom. She instilled that in me. You always want to help somebody else out. You're not in this world by yourself. And God did put us here to do different jobs, but you can't leave your brother or your sister or whomever out there just hanging. If you can help somebody, help somebody. So that's how I got to where I'm at.
And I'll sort of pass the mic here. Sherry, you want to go next?
Sure. I got to this stage, this juncture, as president of the Black Awareness because of several reasons. One, I wanted my kids and my grandkids to have something here in our community. And as I said, we are very few, and um, somebody needs to step up. And I am one who truly feels that it's not that people don't want to do, but sometimes they just need somebody to say, "Come on, y'all, let's do this, or let's go this way." And 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 I've had those people to come alongside to work with me. Another reason is because I felt that we, as a Black people, as a Black culture, were invisible here, and we needed to stand out. We needed to speak out. We needed to say more. And so, since the '90s, we've been here. You know, on some occasions, we've been visible. Some occasions, vocal. Other occasions, not so. But I celebrate the fact that we're still here. And we've been more vocal and more visible since last summer when Mr. Floyd was so viciously, his life uh, just shattered on the ground like a dog. And since that time, we have been involved in several different activities and events to help bring change, to help bring freedom and equality to this world. And I love the theme that the King Center uh, uh, had for this year, um, the urgency to create a beloved community. And they weren't talking about the local community, they were talking about the world at large. And so everything that we do in our local communities is a part of the overall picture to one day have that social justice that we all so want. So I think that anything that we do anywhere in our state as a people, we're having an impact. And I believe that we're having an impact here in Juneau.
You're here. Jasmin, you want to go next?
So how I kind of came into this world in this field, I would say honestly two ways. Number one, it definitely started with my mom. My mom's had me volunteering and being active since I was 3 years old. She used to have me go with her to Special Olympics events and pick up basketballs and just really stress the importance of being visible and being out. I mean, she had me volunteering at the library in Eagle River, filing with the Dewey Decimal System, organizing books. And at the time, I was mad at her, and I just wanted to stay home and play Super Nintendo, whatever. But she told me it was a character builder, and I realized that it really did instill a work ethic and a desire to give back. Because as I got older, and became a teenager, I started to seek out those opportunities and being able to volunteer and get involved. And I would say the thing that really was a catalyst for me about the importance of our community again as people of color and having representation was when I was in my early 20s and I was appointed to the Alaska Juvenile Justice Advisory Committee. And I think it was under the Parnell administration. And just being a part of that and just seeing things happening in some of these youth facilities and just learning how things work with leadership and budgeting and all that stuff, it just reminded me and prompted me that if we're not part of the conversation, we don't have any say so or any power. And like my mom says, and I know a lot of other people say it as well, if you're not at the table, sometimes you're on the menu, right? So I had that desire to not be on anybody's menu. So I just kind of started to seek out opportunities to volunteer, be involved, and just show up. And sometimes people didn't want to hear what I had to say. Sometimes they were really looking at me like, who let you in and how'd you find us? But I felt like it was important for them to just see my Black face in all these different spaces. So I got that from my mom and my family and just being rooted in a Southern family, but then having that Alaskan experience. So it was almost the best of two different worlds, and just using that to just keep moving forward and seeking out opportunities for the benefit of our community and our people.
Thank you. Nandre, you have your story to add here.
Well, my story kind of began about 5 years old in 1967 while visiting a grandfather in Arkansas. And I didn't really understand what was really going on other than remembering that there was a cross being burnt in my grandfather's um, property. And I just remember how he reacted. Of course, he was scared, but it was more of my protection. I didn't know what the symbol meant. I thought it was kind of cool, something burning in the yard, but being a naive 5-year-old, I didn't have an idea, clue. And then we get into the era of 68 and the time of Dr. King and because of Malcolm X and JFK and Robert Kennedy and all the violence era during that time and seeing how my parents reacted through those different types of crises and assassinations. Then I started getting a little bit of awareness of what was going on because my mom and my father were advocates as far as joining lockouts, sit-outs, and protests. And so here I am, a 7-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid, sitting down with them, not totally understanding, but seeing or being around the aura that was going on of people yelling, people screaming, and people praying, and people are certainly cheering on, trying to champion on the civil rights movement. So that kind of stuck with me over time. And then, of course, as I got older and came to Alaska, I didn't get involved right away in 1982, but about 1983, 84, I started looking around with NAACP as well as the Anchorage MLK Junior Foundation of Alaska. And I kind of involved myself with the events themselves. But then that was only being part of with the event because what I started realizing, okay, the MLK was only being like a once a year type thing. I said, it's got to be more than Dr. King than just celebrate once a year. Mm-hmm. And so when I came out to the Valley, I got involved with the local the independent chapter of the Matsu MLK Junior Foundation. And then by doing that, I said, okay, we got to do more than just celebrate once a year. We got to get more involved, in the community, and recognize that we're not a political organization, but we do stand for racial justice and ethnic unity. And that's kind of where we are today. Is that since 2001, when the organization first was founded, to now, within the last 3 to 5 years, we have welcomed in the Chicaloon tribe as well as Connect tribe out here in the Valley with their support, and that had not happened. What happened would be we would have our events or our situations, and they would have theirs, and so we were never bridged together. So now it's pleasing to know that we're really bridging ourselves together culturally. And so as time went on, we still look at, okay, Dr. King philosophy and Elizabeth Protovich philosophy and her work that she's done, a lot of indigenous people of the state of Alaska, is that they realize that we have to carry these movement on. Those are just not one-time events in our life, and they're very important then, but they're really prevalent now. And so it takes a lot of the youth people, as yourself, Alyssa, to be able to carry that torch on. One of the benefits that you guys, the youth of today, have over what I have experienced, and probably some other people that are older than I'm 50 59, is that there's a lot of prejudices that I brought with, a lot of anger that I brought with me as growing up as a youth dealing with racism. I graduated from a college, I did graduate from college, but I graduated from high school where we had separate homecoming courts. You had a white court and you had a black court. And so we had a lot of segregation within our school system, and we really tried to battle that. So, and I grew up in that. So a lot of those prejudices came with me, and thank God a lot of them I had to suppress and overcome some of those anxieties to be able to move on with other cultures. And So when it came to certain protests and certain movements, I would really err to caution, because I've seen what they have done and what they can do if not done correctly, if not done with the appropriate channels and with a lot of forethought. Because just saying I'm going to do something and not realize how volatile and how violent those protests and marches can be, it kind of shows me that the person doesn't really understand the historical past. And so what I say is a benefit to you, because people like you, is that when you don't have those prejudice uh, built behind you, you don't look at those things, and it's a lot of times you're not even aware of them until all of a sudden you're in the midst of it, and you're like, wow, what all this activity and all this negativity came from. And see, I can sit back and say, I already knew that it was there, because it's just waiting to manifest. And then when somebody that, for lack of a better term, being naive of the historical fact when it came to marches. I mean, you look at Dr. King and Malcolm X, and they had two different philosophies. And the philosophy of having to deal with a march and a peaceful protest, meaning that you sit there and just take anything and everything that somebody gives you and you still stand fast. I mean, that's a powerful concept, to where instead of just saying, like, you touch me, I'm touching you back. I don't care what it is, I'm ready to fight. And I guarantee you, if with the BLM that Jasmin spearheaded and the one we had out here with Aurora Till, if that mentality had taken place, it would have been a totally different outcome, because I guarantee you there were people there waiting for that to happen, because that was the historical thing that they wanted to do. Because we don't perpetrate violence, then they'll perpetrate violence on us to try to make us fight back. And it sort of destroys the whole philosophy. And that's one of the sacrifices of those civil rights movement, that a lot of those men and women and our grandfathers and grandmothers and aunts and uncles and friends, that they sacrificed their bodies and their lives for us today to be able to have a peaceful way of trying to still have that movement go forth. But the thing is, we have to realize that it's not done yet. It's not over yet, because those people back then have offsprings too. And somehow those offsprings are here today, trying to stop any type of positive movement between the races, between the different ethnic backgrounds. And they have their own agenda. And they want to stop us. They don't want us to recognize that we all are in it together. So and that was been my biggest thing, is wanted to try to do some bridge building with the community itself, and be blunt and be blatant when I am invited, or any one of our board members are invited to speak, that we request that you just be blunt, especially if it's a group that's not of our own ethnic group, that you be blunt and just really tell what really happened, what's happening, and how it, what our perspective is, because we don't want to really sugarcoat it. We want people to understand that these flights and these fights that we have today, this hidden systemic racism, it still exists. And if the kids today don't recognize when it happens, then they're not going to see it, and they're going to be a victim of it again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre. There's so much to unpack with just that. The blessings and the curses of being Black, and being Black visibly, and doing work in the Black community is not without its blessings and its curses.
Mhm.
One thing I did want to ask is, what was the one thing during your journey, the one thing that you were a part of, or that you spearheaded in your community, that let you know, yeah, this is exactly where I need to be. This is the community that, I'm a part of. This is what we need. And I think to give you all an example, um, years ago, it was, it was after I was still in college, and there was a Black student who essentially got kicked out of class because of her hair. She had, she had dreadlocks, and she put it in a bun, and apparently the teacher did not like that. And so, as her friend and the very voracious person that's like, oh really, is that the case, we got
Wow.
we just started talking with other Black students on campus and being like, wouldn't it be funny if perhaps we all came there with our hairstyles and just visually just, I unpicked my hair and I've got an afro out to here, and just sit in the class in the back and just be there. And it turned into like a 20-person sit into this person's class, and they're like, what is going on right now? And of course, this is Maymester, and so there's like 6 people in the class. But that was the time, even as petty as that was, because it was pretty petty. It was one of those things where it's like, this isn't necessarily drafting legislation. This isn't expanding, voter education or rights, but it is a moment of solidarity. And it is a moment of, being like, you know what? These are my people. And if somebody is going to be petty to one of us, we're going to be petty right back, and we're going to have some fun with it. And that's exactly what we did. And we made her feel a lot better and a lot more comfortable coming back into that class and being able to just be herself and take care of her hair the way that she needed to, which is a right that we all have. So what was one thing, perhaps maybe not as petty as that, that you all were a part of, that just let you know that this was the thing for you, and that needed to happen?
First of all, I don't see that as petty. That's not petty.
Right on the coattail of that, as I say, it's not a petty issue. I mean, you took it as petty because that was a way to actually deal with it, but it was actually an issue that was really culturally involved. Because if you look at any other culture, in the United States especially, they're freedom to express themselves without repercussion. But as soon as we as a people of color do that, then there's an issue. When I worked with the court system, I had the same issues where, people were able to express all kind of different cultures. But when I want to wear a dashiki or wear different stuff, I got different looks and different takes, and it's not professional. It says, well, no, describe what's professional, because if this person can come in from the Orient and wear certain type of their cultural stuff and not be ridiculed, what's the difference? And so by far, you took it as a petty thing because it's a lot of times, sometimes laughter helps you to really deal with it. But the underlying thing of that whole issue was that you dealt with a very serious nature that could have really gone a lot further than it did had you taken it, because and that's what we deal with people of color a lot, is that we deal with that our freedom of expression is always perturbed to have to fit the mold of corporate America. However, corporate America fits the mold of the world. Because if you've seen some of the board meetings that I've seen with corporate America and from people from different nations, you see a diverse culture of people. They're not required, to come in and if it's their attire to not to wear a suit and tie to a business meeting, they don't wear a suit and tie to a business meeting. And one of the reasons why I got involved too, because I was started thinking about how in Alaska, I don't remember which governor was in administration, that they wanted to when it came to the native culture coming to speak to Juneau, they had to speak English and they had to look and dress a certain way in Juneau. And I thought that was just really crazy that they're going to be in a foreign land and tell people that is indigenous of this country, of this particular state, land, to look and act a certain way. And so that's something that we have to constantly look at, that this is more than just the dreadlocks or the braids. I mean, it's really, it's a lot, it goes a lot deeper than that. So.
Mm-hmm. I would love to make a statement. Young lady, you did not do anything petty. And you made a statement, you took a stand, and you did it in solidarity with your friend. And I applaud you. Don't ever, ever think that when you do these kinds of things that they're petty, because they're not. It's huge. And I applaud you for that. The reason that I am where I am today, currently, like I said before, this event with Mr. Floyd just really rocked my world. I'm from Louisiana, and I saw and experienced a lot of things as a child, and left there when I was 18, almost 19, and I never moved back, thinking I was escaping some things. And you come here, and our Alaska Natives are the ones who are getting it worse than we are on their own land, which is absolutely ridiculous. And so I am here today because I believe I was shaken awake last summer. I had seen things happen, let some things go, have been silent about some things, but not anymore. It's time out for all that. Just time out. We have to open our mouths. We have to speak. We have to speak our mind intelligently. And like somebody already said, what they want us to do, what they want to do is push our buttons so that we can fight back. But we saw that Dr. King had a dream, and he was able to revolutionize a world with his dream and his vision of a nonviolent approach. And I think it's still relevant today. We just have to be intelligent in the way that we approach things. I am honored to be in the position I am in my community. We were leaders in our community before I joined this organization as pastors. And like I said, today it's not the easiest thing to stand, but we must stand. We have to. They have to. Our communities have to know that we're here, and that we mean business. We just do, and we will not tolerate nonsense. And so I approach my role very prayerfully. You have to be smart, and you have to be aware of what's going on around you. And so that's where I am.
Jasmin, I see you have your hand raised.
I'm like, I didn't want to like jump in per se, so I'm trying to like follow
No rules at the round table.
I'm like, you got Sherry, Wendy, and Andre. I'm trying to like also listen, so I'm all like excited on the call, like, oh my gosh, this is like a statewide Black thing. It's a beautiful feeling. But I think the thing that I would say just kind of reaffirmed for me, like where I was supposed to be, was when we did the first Black Lives Matter rally a few years ago. And I think for me, that was just kind of like background context up to the planning of it. That was probably the most stressful, scariest, unknown event ever. Because at that time, people only knew what they think they saw on TV about it, right? And for us, we had to reinforce, we are doing this because we believe Black Lives Matter. It really has something to do with an organization, or whatever you think, whatever you're trying to turn it to is deeper than that. It's just the message, right? And so that first rally a few years ago was very stressful, because we got so much backlash. We got people from military bases saying, we were told not to come, we're going to watch across the street. We had people in guns that were just ready. And it's reminded me of what Andre said, how They just knew how we were going to act, right? They just knew it was going to be something that it wasn't. They already knew. So they justified the outright racism and aggression towards that event by saying they had to do it, right? Because they knew how we were going to act. And for me, the greatest thing that came out of that was like, oh, it was like, wow, I can go through something hard, scary, and dangerous and still keep my cool. Now I know how I'm feeling inside. I know what I want to say, but I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of that, right? And from that event and just seeing how it was powerful and it was intentional and it paved the way for so much more. But then in a crazy weird way, you know, I'm very transparent where I didn't grow up having a good relationship with law enforcement. It just wasn't good. It was always stressful in a bad situation. But now we can have the kind of event that is so powerful that even though it's rooted in saying we don't like something that you did, law enforcement, but I ended up having a really good open dialogue relationship with APD to the point of they came to my son's birthday because in a weird cosmo now he wants to be a police officer. So like I had little cop cars and all kinds of stuff. It was quite the birthday party for Mountain View. But for me that was very powerful because after all these rallies and this most recent one, it was very telling for them to say, you know, even though we know what these events are about and we know what happened and we know what's at stake, we respect you and the planners enough to know that if you do it, we don't believe there's going to be a problem. So do what you have to do. And we still want to support you and we still talk and we still dialogue. And for me, that was very reaffirming because old Jasmin was very much more, a little more self-centered and a little bit more militant at times in the sense of like, I don't like police and I don't care. But then the older I got, you know, I'm like 35, I had to understand I'm doing this for a reason and there has to be some sort of an outcome. So although I don't like the things that they always do, what do I want them to do differently? And if I can't be at a point where we can end up having dialogue and talking to each other, and at some point saying we're going to work together and like Andre said, have that uncomfortable conversation, what is the point of all this? So for me, the planning of that event was very scary because there just was no blueprint. It was just, we just want to do it, right? But then the outcome of saying, wow, even though we did this and what they thought they were going to get, they actually said out of everyone that they've seen in any kind of rallies, it was great, orderly, fine. And I'm like, well, what did you expect? Did you think it was going to be something different because of what you saw and who we are? So although I know I feel some kind of way, I don't want to give you the satisfaction of that. And so for me, that was very empowering and something that I wanted to just share and pass on to anyone else who said, I'm going to do one of these as well, letting them know you don't have to be what they think you're going to be. If you remember what our mission is and what we're about and what we're moving towards, you know, we can be intentional and do something good and powerful. And I think for me, that was a big deal because all of us were like late 20s, early 30s parents who were just like, let's just go for it. And you know, it turned out as a beautiful, powerful thing. So when I feel like I'm having those rough days, as I think we all know in activism world, you have the burnout days, the tired days, and the like, I'm by myself days, Lord. It just, I think about those kind of moments and it just kind of recharges me to keep going.
Well, I'll go next. I can't pin it to one purposeful situation that I've been in. I've always been a very outspoken person. My mom always told me wherever I go, whatever I do, be careful. She was in 30s and 40s was her time frame. My grandfather was white and my grandmother was Black. And all these years, my mom never ever told me that. The way I looked at it, it was one day, I don't know, his picture was there one day and my sister was around and I said, Paul looked like he's white. And my sister said, girl, go. So I went and I asked my mom and she said, yes, he was white. But my grandfather, all the memories I know of him, he never treated me any differently because he was white. He never talked to me about white privilege and things of that nature. I learned that as I grew up. But my mom always said to me, Wendy, you need to shut that mouth. You need to learn how to shut that mouth. And then when I was asked in school what I wanted to be when I grew up, it was always a teacher. My mom was going to put aside everything she could put aside so I could become a teacher. And I said, no, we struggled. She was a single mom. And, you know, as going through life, you look back on those things and you appreciate it so much more. And when Jasmin was speaking about when they did the Black Lives Matter and all the ruckus that I heard behind that, I'm sitting here going, you know, George Floyd, it was a traumatic incident that happened to our country. It was. But in my community, I grew up in the ghetto. We saw things like that all the time, not in the center of town like it was done with George Floyd. And so when all the white people started coming to us and talking to me and apologizing for things, and I'm talking in my early 60s, people were saying, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening and this, that, and the other. And, you know, in my mind, I accepted it, what they were saying, and I'm grateful for it. But I saw so much of that when I was growing up. It was like, you had to know some of it. And when you talk to a lot of white people, they didn't. They hadn't come from those areas. They hadn't seen those things. So I am grateful and appreciative, but we do have to continue our march. We have to continue our way of life. We have to continue with educating our children. Because here in Alaska, I see a lot of white people as my friends. I do. And they are my friends. I can call on them when I need something, just like they know they can call on me when they need something. But we have to realize all of them are not there for our good. And they will continue their march to be against us. But we have to have our kids understand everybody is not a bad person.
Right.
And we need to work together and continually to accept what is going to happen is going to happen. I mean, that march on the Capitol, that's the first time in how many years that we've seen something like that and people died. But if they were all Black, I think it would have been a lot more deaths. So we have to realize these things are going to happen, but we have to also realize we have to continue to move forward. And the only way to move forward is we have to work things together.
For sure. And that is, I think all of you, you know, have definitely highlighted something that I'm still, I'm still navigating and learning, for sure.
Let me piggyback off of Wendy real quick, if I may. She brings up a very interesting point that oftentimes is left out of discussion, and that is that, and I didn't grow up in the ghetto. I kind of grew up in during the big labor movement when the middle class was kind of developed. So my parents were kind of like well off, but we were still divided by that railroad track between the white district and the Black district. And so when she brought up that point of, she wasn't necessarily totally surprised, I'm just kind of paraphrasing Wendy, that you've recognized this and this is something that you've been accustomed to seeing. It just happened to be on mainstream. And if you look at the Watts riots back in the 70s, late 60s, 70s, I can't remember exactly when it was. Back then, there was an outcry of drugs in the minority in the minority neighborhoods, and there's proof that's been on different circuits and documents that I've read that said that the government, you know, in some situations would put loaded trains within those inner cities of alcohol, guns. And so what do you think is going to happen when some kid comes across a train full of goods like that? Curiosity, first of all, of course, is going to infiltrate into the city and into the community. But there's always been an outcry within the Black community of various things. And so when it gets mainstream televised, as Malcolm X said, the revolution is going to be televised, and all this stuff is now being televised because people got cameras and they're filming. We didn't have it back when I grew up. And yes, I recognize it and it happened, but it's almost like it's not a problem until it crosses over to the white neighborhood. And now it's an epidemic. And the difference is that when the drug crosses over to the white community, they're given treatment, they're giving hospitalization, they're giving psychological help. However, in our community, there's arrest, there's breakup families, and it's totally opposite in dealing with it. And we all know that when it comes to sentencing of various different types of drugs, a person gets arrested for, a white person can land a plane with kilos of cocaine and get a lighter sentence than a guy that's on the street selling crack, that's happen to be a minority. And so it's always been saying that the just us system is just us. And if you got the right amount of money, which I'm not saying OJ was guilty, I'm not saying he was innocent. But what I'm saying was it was the money that made the difference, that changed, that color wasn't a spectrum. And a lot of us don't have those kind of resources to fight a system like that. So if you got the money, it doesn't matter what the crime is. And so when it affects one community, when it doesn't affect one community, they're totally shocked. But I think if we can keep awareness of those communities and let them know that these things are still happening within our inner cities. And by the time it gets to mainstream media, it's been happening for years. It's been just something that just started. And I really kind of almost really totally in my heart refuse to believe that a lot of people that are not of color are not aware. I think they refuse to recognize. Because some of these things you can just see. And that's where the systemic racism coming in, because we out in the Valley, when we talk from our perspective, that we teach to self-police yourself. And we're talking to the right community to self-police yourself, meaning that when you are in a situation or a conversation and somebody's talking about another race, a very negative thing, you have to do something about that conversation. Either you agree with it or you disagree with it. And either way, you have to stand for what's right. Because if they're being so negative about a certain race and you're participating in it, then you're part of the problem. So if you want to stop the racism, you got to stop it heads on. And it starts in these little bitty, what they call water cooler conversations. I don't know how many times I've gone to the water cooler and there's a couple of white guys sitting there and they split when I show up. The conversation changes. And so we have to make ourselves accountable, but also make them aware to not to take that little blind's eye to these little things that they see that really happens. Because God gave us a conscience and we can choose to turn it on, we can choose to turn it off. But as a little kid, you know when you've done wrong, because a lot of times you try to cover it up. And so as an adult, you can feel it. It's hard to draw a picture of it, but like some people say, I know when I see it. I can't tell you where it's at, but I know when I see it, because I don't look for it. I just know when I see it. So I just want to leave you, just kind of give you a little thought of that. I thank you, Wendy, for bringing it up, because it's very important to let our people of color and other people, other races know that we are affected just as much as everybody else. So when our culture has been affected and it comes to mainstream media, you got to know that deep down that it's been enrooted so far that it's just busting out. It's got nowhere to go. So it's got to come out. And if you're going to help, you got to be part of the solution, not the problem.
Thank you, Andre. And I think that definitely segue into the next question, not just being in these, in these oppressive systems, where we have come from, but especially here in Alaska, we know that our representation and our experiences are invisibilized and silenced. And, I know, especially for me, being an organizer and being a woman of color and carrying that into many spaces is incredibly difficult, especially when I don't see people that, look like me, that are doing things like me, that, it's often, it's the same in school. I was the only Black kid in the school, and now I'm the only Black organizer in a lot of spaces. And so, I guess, what I really want to bring to you all is, what does that Black leadership look like in a space where we're often not given the space, we're not given the time, or we're not given, the ability to lead? What does that look to you?
I can start that one off if you like, Alyssa. Being on the school board for 17 years that I was on the school board, everybody says to me, "Oh, you're doing a great job." Every time it was time for me to get off the board, "Oh, you got to do one more term. You got to do one more term." Some people would also say, "You're the Black voice on the school board," because I was the only Black one there for a while. It wasn't the fact that I was the only Black voice there. You need the support of your community, regardless of who I am on the board. I have my opinion about the way I see things should go, but it's great to hear from your community and say to you, "Okay, this is going on. I don't feel like it should go this way. Let's have a conversation." Call your board members. It doesn't have to be your Black board member. If there is something going on, yes, I'm in leadership. But the point of the matter is, if you see someone setting a fire down the street from you and you got 10 people out there watching the fire, who's going to call the fire department and tell them come and put the fire out? My word is, come together. Don't be afraid of a situation. You have to let your leaders know what you're thinking, so change can take place in the manner that you see it fit. It may not change in that way totally, but as a leader, it's my right to do what I feel the community wants and needs. I don't know everybody's needs. I don't know everybody's wants, but I can put it in perspective to where, come and tell me, come and talk to me. Even though I'm not on the board, I can still call up the superintendent or whomever, even the legislature. If you feel like there is something that needs to be done in education, don't be afraid to step out and say it. How can I lead you if I don't know what it is I'm leading you to? I can lead you to whatever I think you need to be led to, but let me know what the issues are and I can lead you much better. And I think that's a great leader.
I'll go next. I'm excited about this. I got a checklist. Um, so I will say, in my experience, like, I feel like I still have a lot to learn. Like, and I love learning. I think that's the way to do it. So for me, it feels like a weird middle ground. Not old enough to be an elder, but I don't feel young. My joints don't feel young, any of that stuff. So I'm just kind of in this 30 space of like, I still want to learn and I need that mentorship as well. But then I also recognize that people sometimes come to me and they're like, they want that support. So I have a little checklist that I kind of go by, but I will share. And this is just what I've encountered. So the first thing I always fall back on is the importance of mentorship. Growing up, I used to feel so frustrated because my mom, my family, and them would be like, you have to get ready to take over. It's going to be your job one day to do this, this, and this. You're going to have to do this, this, and this. And then when the time came and I didn't do a good job, they would get on me and be like, why did you do it that way? You should have did it this way, but you didn't give me chances to practice, right? You just told me my turn was going to come. And then one day it came and I was just supposed to be ready, but I didn't get that baton pass. Like we were in like a race, like you didn't pass it to me. It was just, you was done. It was my turn. So I think mentorship is a great way to develop leadership in the Black community. Another big one that I think is important that I try to go by is encouraging people to be themselves and supporting where they are in the journey. You know, everybody starts off at different places. Some people have a more defined view of who they are, what they're about, and what they want, and some don't. And so if they come to you and they say that they're ready, and I got, yeah. So if they come to you and they say that they're ready, I always tell people that I just respect where you are. I know where I'm at and what I think and what I want, but maybe you have a baby step and that baby step is an accomplishment for you. And then we'll work towards what's next. So I'm cool with meeting where they are. Another big one is erase fear-based leadership. And this is a tough one. So I talk with my mom about this all the time. Her generation was treated so differently because of the color of their skin that she wanted nothing more than to be the same, right? Not to assimilate in the sense of saying she didn't want to be Black, just not have it be called out, because her whole life down in Georgia was that. Whereas on my generation, we have gone to an extreme other side where now it's like, I can't control these Black people by treating them different as second class, but I can control you by erasing you. And as a result, you end up having a generation who's like, no, I'm going to fight back. I'm going to speak up, and you're going to see me, because we're on the opposite side. So I tell my elders and folks that I work with, if you have a young person who comes to you with that mentality, don't cast it off as angry or any of that stuff. Just understand the difference in where we've come from. Someone constantly telling you you are different and I'm going to do something to make you different, to saying, fine, I'm not allowed to legally tell you you're different, but I can make you erase, right? So then that's where it comes from, with that us demanding the voice, the seat, and it coming off more stern and sometimes aggressive than what we might be used to. So I just encourage understanding that perspective, especially for up and coming leaders. I only have 3 more, I promise. The next one I think is important is being a sounding board for those in need. People sometimes message me at 10 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes they just say, I had a bad day. I need someone to talk to me who's a Black female, or do you understand? And even if I don't have the answer, I just be there and say, I'm Black too. I get it. I've been there. I'm not going to judge you. I hear you. So sometimes it's just that sounding board of me saying, I understand where you're coming from, and us just having that relatability. And I encourage folks to share that story too. So I also was talking with one of the reverends one time, and he was saying, it's too painful to bring up some of these things that we've been through in the past, and that's why we don't talk about it. And I said, I respect that and I understand that, but also understand from a young person's standpoint, if you don't tell me what you've been through, I don't know what's at stake. And I know sometimes it's hard and I know sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I need to hear what you went through in your story so I can resonate and understand why you need me to fight the way we are and what we're working towards. And then the last one that I think is so important is just focusing on the people. And I think sometimes we get caught up on the title, the group, the nonprofit. But like I tell people, when I leave this earth, I can't take a title. I can't take my business. I can't take none of this stuff. All I can do is focus on how I treated people and what I got done and what I accomplished. So if someone comes and they need support or they have an idea or a vision, my philosophy is treat them the same as if they're a president or they got something, and if they have nothing in an idea and good intentions. And I just, for me personally, I have just found that that allows me to stay true to who I am, but then also support people how I think they want to be supported, based off just having that mutual respect of where are you, what's your first goal, and what can I do to support you as the person. And I don't expect anything back, and I think that we should remember that whether they have an infrastructure or not, they have some assets that we want or not, just being there because they have the desire to do for our people. And I don't know, I feel like those are the things that guide me. But in even spaces like this and having this conversation and just talking to each other unapologetically and looking outside of our immediate community. Like I can't say enough how happy I am that there's Fairbanks on here and Juneau and all those places. I seek out that because I think it's important to understand each other's narrative statewide. So that's just kind of like my little leadership spiel. It's coming to a bookstore near you. No, I was kidding. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I hope you all were listening and wrote that down, because that was fire. So in that way, I will pass the baton and actually communicate in passing the baton. Sherry, do you have anything that you want to share with us?
Well, mine is not as in depth as Jasmin. Thank you so much. I would just say to embrace who you are and embrace your role. Go about it confidently. Um, be yourself. I found that when you try to fit in to somebody else's mold or what others think that you're supposed to say or do or be, you're robbing not only yourself, but you're robbing those around you. They're not getting the authentic you. So be yourself, be consistent, show up, be trustworthy, and just be real. Whatever that is, I believe that even as leaders, if we have those shortcomings, if we have those things those not so good attributes that God always gives us, those who will come alongside us and sandpaper us into what He would have us be. Our population here in Alaska is not what we would hope it to be, or in our communities, but we're different. We stand out. We should be proud of who we are and go about our role confidently. And those around us will appreciate that because they're learning in the process. If we decide to act any other way than who we really are, we're not getting anything accomplished. Be yourself and run with what we have set before us to do, because what we do is great, necessary, and needed in our communities.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to add on that this is why I do what I do. These young folks that's online today, and I consider you all young folks because I'm older than all of y'all.
Probably not. I bet not.
But I am so elated that we
Yeah.
have young people of this
Yes.
caliber and are speaking out the way they are. They're organizing the way they are.
Mhm.
That's my purpose. I want to put things out there for you guys to do what we were doing back then. You know, my ancestors did it before. I've done it, and now is yours time. Really, I just want to be there to support you. You guys are phenomenal.
Yes. And amen.
Well, thank you. And of course, as I probably the youngest one on here. I don't know. I'm 26, so I'm probably the baby. But I think it's up to all of us. I mean, unless you are in a coffin 6 feet under, you're still with us. And so we got to work together. And I am just so grateful for being able to do this work together and do it intergenerationally, because we do come from so many different places. And I know for me, my parents being West Indian and learning how to be Black in this country and, in the early 80s was not easy. And so how were they going to teach, this now American child how to be a Black American when they were learning that? And so just being able to have conversations like this and really figuring out what that is and how we do that together. I'm always excited to do that. Andre, what do you have for us? I know you have something to speak on when it comes to. Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Well, you just mentioned you've been from West Indies, and you were given the talk that typically a lot of African American Black communities give their sons. The talk. And it amazes me. Well, actually, it doesn't amaze me because a lot of my white friends don't understand what the talk is. Even after explaining it, why do you have to tell it to your kid? Well, I'll say, first of all, they're not in the same circumstances and certain guidelines and rules that you are as a white individual. We don't have the privy. How oftentimes we've seen, especially televised on TV, where these white kids are defying authority, and authority exercise so much patience. But when it comes to minority kids, it's just like you obey, you have no authority, you say nothing, you do nothing, you just do what I tell you. And that's where the talk becomes in, because my father would always say, talk less, live another day, and deal with it at the right moment. And the right moment is that he said, son, you have to learn the system and learn what the system teaches you, and the system, or how the system works, to be able to voice your opinion. And there's a time and place, meaning that if you got an issue with a cop, then you need to learn before that it ever comes up, how do you go about filing the appropriate complaint? How do you document this kind of information? And then do it in an appropriate place. Because trust me, out on the street at 10 o'clock at night, it's not so bad in Alaska, but still it's dark. On a lonely road, it's not an appropriate time to sit there and try to justify how you feel about certain things. Now, I had some young kids that were, in their teens, that they felt they could do the same thing as their white counterpart. And I said, no, sons, you don't have that same type of privilege. Unfortunately, it would be nice if that was the case, but you are going to be treated so differently. And secondly, I said, when it comes to being recognized by the law enforcement community, if you dress the part of the thuggish, and which is kind of I almost call it really a fallacy, because all that thug life is glamour to sell records. But our kids a lot of times take that as a real culture that's right on the street. You take that on the street, then you're going to be treated like that. And that's this. I mean, if you dress the part, you dress the part. I mean, how else they're gonna recognize who you are? But the thing that Jasmin says about leadership is one of the things that I've learned is definitely is patience. Is that no matter how and what is thrown at you, you really have to think on your feet and be patient and calm and try to prepare yourself. And even if you're not prepared, you can't let the other side know that. And so you built that confident level up to where a point in time where a person doesn't know, does this person really understand what's going on, or does he not know? Because as soon as you let your weakness go, or show what your weakness is, then they would certainly get you. I mean, I can name several times when I've been attacked, and one guy just says, "You just let stuff roll off your back." I say, "Well, it's not that it didn't roll off my back. It's just that there's a time and place to deal with certain issues, and I also recognize that you are trying to incite me." And so you have to recognize when somebody is trying to incite you, not inspire you. And there's a big difference. So you have to be careful that people are just not throwing bones your way, because what they're trying to find is that where's that weak spot that I can get a hold of Wendy and Sherry and Jasmin and Lisa, Allison, sorry. And so being a leader is one of those things where you should have that conversation with God, because you're going to need that really undying spiritual support along with the mentorship and the things that Jasmin mentioned. You're going to need those things, because you're going to have that closet where you can go into and just be alone and cry and cry out. But when you come out, you got to be fearless. And you also got to be humanoid too. I mean, you can't be just like you don't have a conscious, or you're not aware of people. You got to be compassionate, but you also got to realize that people are going to pour a lot of stuff on you, and you got to be willing to find that avenue to allow it to roll back off, because people have a tendency to want to pour more off than to give. And you got to know, okay, what is manifesting me to move, to motivate me to go forward? Is this just somebody that just wants to vent, and because they got nobody else to talk to? Or is there a true issue here that needs to be dealt with? And listening is another part. You gotta be willing to listen and think on your feet at the same time. And you're not gonna always have the right answers, but if you take the time and you meditate on most things, you can come up with a concrete answer, for a temporary answer, until you have the time. And if you don't really know, you have to admit it as a leader. I don't know. I will let you know. You don't want to go up there and just start BS and just start, saying a bunch of stuff just to try to satisfy people, because those same people are going to come back at you in another way. And like I think Jasmin said it, and Wendy and Sherry all said it, that You have to be honest. You know, you have to be truthful. And once people have confidence in what you do and what you say, because they can look at these lips and they can see, it can hear the words spill out. But what they're going to look at is what your actions are. And if your actions are backing up what you're saying and what you're doing. And that's what's most important. You know, if you're going to say something, you know, stick your word to it. You know, this is my belief. This is what I'm going to fall for. But if you don't really believe it, don't do it because a whole bunch of people say you should believe it. You know, like for instance, as the president of the Matthew MLK Jr. Foundation, our core belief is racial diversity and ethnic equality. And we have people that want us to come in and do a whole lot of other agendas that's not to our core. My belief is that that was Dr. King. If you can prove me or show me some stuff that Dr. King said this is his philosophy because of the organization that I'm in, I'm willing to support it. But until I can find something that the person's agenda supports Dr. King's philosophy, then I'm not going to just bring it in just because I need membership or because I need funding for membership. I don't do it because of that. I do it because I want to stand fast and stand tall on the core principle. And I'm not going to change it because they say that it's a change in time. Well, I don't believe that statement, because if it was a change in time, then we would have no need to still try to fight for the Dr. King's dream. So we're still dealing with those issues they dealt with then, even into today's society. So a lot of things that he's done hasn't changed. So I still believe that you have to stick to your core principles, and as long as they're validated and supported by your organization, then that's great, you know. But I'm saddened that I see certain organizations now that are changing their philosophies. So I think you should just change your name, not just a philosophy, because if you were an organization back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and that your core principles was a certain value, and now you want to totally change what your philosophy is today, then don't piggyback off what you did back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Come up with a different group. Don't come in a group that I'm affiliated with that has nothing to do with what you're trying to do today. So right now, like I said, our core thing is going to be, and it always has been, you know, bridge building amongst the ethnic, various ethnic groups and racial groups and racial biases and equality. And anything else other than that, then that's a totally separate group. Now, like Dr. King, he did not exclude anybody. And everybody's always welcome. The difference is for that time period and this time period, this is what the focus is, and it's on our racial harmony. And we got to fix that. And see, what happens is if we keep having multiple agendas and multiple groups fighting different agendas, we're going to be spread so thin that none of them really gets done. And that's what I believe is what a lot of people want to happen that are against our different organizations, because if they can divide us and separate us into different various groups, then nobody's going to be really totally strong. But when you're united and to simple causes, because you got to remember when in Dr. King's situation, that the organization got real strong, and it had less adversaries until he started getting into Vietnam and stretching what the boundaries were, and things just started happening. So you have to be a leader. You have to understand that when those things happen, that you're going to be in charge of them. And you got to be able to deal with the repercussions of those.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andre. Well, we have a couple of folks that have to jump off right at 2:30, and I think you know, the last question I had for you, and I'll let Sherry go first. You know, with the remaining time that we have together, I think it's exactly what you said, is that, as people marginalized and as communities that, have created a lot of these movements, we're often the first being tapped to lead the charge. Oftentimes when we're not ready, when we don't have the support, when we don't have the capacity, we're sort of expected to just fix everything, especially as we're not the ones that caused the situation. People are so excited to see Black leaders, Black artists, Black authors, and don't really understand or know what it takes to support a Black leader, a Black author. Just go out and run, go out and put your name in the hat. But when it comes down to campaign time, where are the campaign managers? Where are the volunteers? So my question for you all is, how do we, not just as Black people in our community, but how does our collective community truly invest in that Black leadership? So we're not just seeing that representation, but we're feeling that representation, and we're seeing, the benefits of that. We have people that are ready and supported and taken care of throughout the process, even after they get into their positions.
I think, and I'll keep my my answer short so that everybody else will have a minute or so to go before we break. But I think this is one of the forums, is to stay connected, know who each other is. And I've not met any of you before last night, and I am elated to have been on this call today. So I think the one thing is to be and stay connected, and be able to form those friendships and relationships so that we can move forward.
I would say another way to, I don't know, I guess foster, whether running for office or just, all of this that we've been talking about, is to stay, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess stay transparent and stay with the open communication. And I say that speaking to the bumping heads conflict side. We have to move together, right? Sometimes we don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes we don't get along. But at the end of the day, I think we have to look at it as we're a family, and we're trying to move towards a common good place. And we cannot do that if we are not supporting one another, or we're bickering among each other, or having those kind of problems. And I think it goes back to that saying that everybody always uses: there could be a crab in the barrel mentality. But then you have to ask the question, who put the crabs in the barrel in the first place? And how can the crabs make a chain link to get each other out the barrel and start taking each other out? So I don't know how the right verbiage is, but I think we do have to just moving together, staying positive, and being committed to being honest and transparent with each other if we have forks or issues on the way.
And thank you so much. And I think for folks that are tuning in, you are in CP time. We run a little late, and we start a little late and we run a little late. So if you have to jump off at 2:30, totally fine. We will catch up with you later. This, of course, is being recorded and on Facebook Live, so you can always jump back in for the parts that you miss.
Well, I just want to jump in before too many people get off and make sure that they know about our, the NAACP will be having a Black History Month celebration on Saturday. It's from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. I can send you the email because it's set up under a webinar. And if you put the webinar number in, it doesn't come to the way it's supposed to over Zoom. I'm not techie, so I don't even know how to tell you, but I can send the email out to you, and all you have to do is click on the link on the email. We also have a Black History contest in the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District presently, and the applications are due by the 5th of March. So if you know any students that want that flyer, I can send that flyer out to you also, or I can send it to Alyssa, and whoever wants it, Alyssa can send it out. But I would prefer if I do it. I want to put any more work on Alyssa. But it's for our students here. We always give out great prizes. It's always something technical, computers and things like that. And this year is the Black family is our theme. They have to write around the 9th through the 12th grade, and 7th and 8th graders have to write an essay. 7th and 8th graders have to write an essay, 150 words. High schoolers have to write 250-word essay. We have the kindergartens to 3rd grades. They just have to go out and find a picture and color a picture of the Black family. We had 3rd, 4th graders have to do the same thing basically. And the 4th through 6th graders have to do something similar, but they have to do bigger pictures or better pictures because of their grade level. So, oh, he put it out there. Way to go, Joe. Thank you. So that's the link that you have to click on in order to get to the Black History Month celebration. Joe Maverick just came to my rescue. Thank you ever so much. But I wanted to do closing remarks too. I can do that now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to join in with what she's gone. I don't see her name up there anymore. Jasmin, what she was stating about we have to be real with one another. We have to work together with ourselves before we go out and expect people to work with us. In the NAACP, this is the first year, and I've been with the NAACP here in Fairbanks for about 15 years off and on. This is the first year I've seen as many people come to our rescue. And I need to stop saying our rescue. They're coming for an issue and they want to see it resolved. And I feel they want to see it resolved just as much as we want to see it resolved. They're looking at equity and inclusion the same way I've looked at it all my life. And they're helping us with a lot of issues that have to do with our education system. They're working with other areas. Joe Maverick has a group that's communications and Racism 101. He's been putting on a lot of projects through the NAACP here. We have another police brutality accountability group. We have different committees that people are working on, and you're more than welcome to email me. And Joe, you can put my email out there if you would like to join with us in some of our projects that we're doing as well with the NAACP. And my email is raad@gci.net. And it's a lot of things that we have going on, but I just want to say we as Black people really need to work together, and then we can expand ourselves out. And don't get so upset sometimes when somebody might give you the truth. I mean, the truth is the life, you know? So, and I know there's a lot of people that would like to run for office or have tried running for office and didn't make it in. Keep trying, keep going for it. I was fortunate enough when I ran against a former school teacher, a retired school teacher that was already on the board, had been on the board for one term, and I won. That was my first time running for office, and I got in. And I enjoyed it so much, I stayed for 17 years. I'm not saying you have to stay that long, but I do know there's a place out there in our legislative system, and education is where we have to start. I mean, we may have different opinions on that, but you have to have a foundation. You have to be educated in order for you to go out there and represent other people. Get your education. You don't have to go to college. I shouldn't say that, but you don't have to go to college. I didn't go to college until later on in my life, but college does help. So if there's a scholarship out there and you want to go and inquire about something, these kids today have a great upbringing. They have what we call career technical education. That is the fields where they can graduate from high school with a certification and they can turn around and get a job starting out at $40 an hour. You know, there's not many of them out there like that, but you can get it while you're in school so you don't have to pay the money when you get out of school. But be behind these kids that are looking for education. Be behind when you hear somebody has a scholarship going on, donate a few dollars to that scholarship so we can get all our kids educated. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Just one last thing, because I do have to run. This is the exact forum that I had in mind for us to do here in Juneau this month, and we just did not bring it together. It's just so much other things going on. I would we have other questions that we would like to ask. I would like to continue this conversation. The name of our forum is going to be Meet Me in Juneau, and it'll be Blacks from all over the state to talk about these very things and some more. So keep your ears and eyes open. I have your names and your email addresses, and we'll be contacting you. And hopefully we can get this done in March. God bless you. And I do have to run. I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's okay. But let me just add also, it doesn't have to be Black History Month for us to have these conversations.
You're absolutely
Why can't
right.
we do it once a month?
That's right.
Or every 2 weeks or whenever, because the word needs to get out.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank
God
you
bless.
so much, Sherry. And I'll look forward to that email.
Yes, absolutely.
Andre, do you have anything that you want to share for the good of the people?
We have come to the end of another blessed day. Because I tell you what, when you have dialogue like this, it does open doors for many people to bring those hard discussed questions and to bring them out. You had a list of questions about leadership, about community, and it allows some of us to share what those experiences are. But we also have to realize that this is only a start. And because of the pandemic, we're able to reach a lot more people than we normally would if we had a special building somewhere. So this is really a blessing that we can reach out further people, because the message can go on because it's being recorded, and we can forward it to other individuals. And so this is a new era of how we can deal with systemic racism, how we can deal with biases, bigotry, ethnic and racial discriminations. So this is a format, and it's one of those formats that we don't have to worry about somebody throwing sticks and mortar and bricks. But we also don't want to get complacent, because this is comfortable, but it's not really a comfortable issue that we're dealing with outside of this video screen. So we got to understand that, yes, we can say what we say and do what we do via Zoom and Facebook Live, but you still got to go out to the brick and mortar buildings where the assembly people are meeting for their monthly or weekly business meetings, and voice your opinion and write in your opinion, because it doesn't just stop here. This gives us a more avenue to reach more people, but it doesn't just stop just this avenue, because when you see somebody face to face, it's a lot different than when you see them via Zoom. So we need to make sure that we welcome ourselves and welcome people into our community, but let the community know that we have a fight. And I don't mean necessarily a fist fight, but it's a systemic racism fight that still is going on, and it's going to take all of us. And we know it's not going to take all of us are not going to join in, because we got a principality out there that don't want us to succeed. And because of that, it's going to take a lot of people that we may not even think that's viable to our cause. Because you got to recall that during the struggles and the civil rights movement with Dr. King, it wasn't successful because of just all African American and Black communities. There was a Jewish community, there was Amish communities, there was the Quakers. I mean, there's a lot of different communities that supported that movement. And we have to make sure that we also not work amongst ourselves, but that we bring in those other communities and make sure that we are all on the same page, on the same accord, because their fight is our fight is their fight. And so we just got to make sure we're not fighting against one another. And for you to do what you're doing right now is more than just a blessing, and is certainly, being Black is not a curse. Because first of all, We are, and you are the most mimicked, sought after, and the most imitated person on this planet. So never think that it's a curse to be what God has given you, because there's many people are trying to look and wish they spend billions of dollars on products just trying to look how you are. And that's one of the things that Malcolm X was trying to teach, is that we had to be careful that society was teaching us to hate our own image, to hate ourselves. You know, for us to go out and do all this weird stuff so we can look like the other people. Why is it that everybody can be themselves, but we have to change who we look like? And then the sad part is, when people of color change what we look like, people are trying to look like us. So it's a blessing and a blessing. The curse is it's not on you, trust me, because you are and we're God's people, and we're a special people because of all the stuff that we've gone through, that our ancestors have gone through, and we're still here today. I mean, we were to the point of annihilation. I mean, there's a Willie Lynch, if you get a chance, there's this book called the Willie Lynch Letters. And this is a systemic way on how there was a way to try to rule a race of people. And if you read some of that stuff, you can see how some of the things that are happening today, how it was designed. Because what you see, how our culture has changed over time, it's not because it's just happened. These things were put in place years ago. And we have to be careful that, recognize that when people are trying to destroy us as a culture, and because our people of color from West Indies and from various countries, the slave ships stopped at all those different islands and they came to America, brought tons of education and technology and knowledge to this country. And yet, most loyal to this country. So it's not a curse for us to be of color of this country when our people have given so much. So keep the smile and keep on the right path that you're going on. And we thank for the community that has been tuning in to us, and that we look further for us to do this more than just once. And like what Miss Wendy was saying, you know, once a month or however the case may be, you know, if it just a few of us just to kind of touch base, it doesn't have to be necessarily a big forum, but I think that we as a panel to at least find a way to stay in touch. So we can facilitate that. I think that'd be a good thing.
For sure. And I have all of your emails anyway, so that was going to happen.
Oh, okay. You said we're set up.
I wanted to thank you, though, Alyssa. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. I know we talk often, and I just want to say publicly, I really appreciate you. I continue to watch your growth. I continue to take orders from you from time to time, and I really appreciate the guidance you have given me as well as what I've given you. Thank you ever so much for this forum. It was really good. I really appreciate it.
And thank you all for joining. Thank you all for tuning in. Of course, this is not the first nor last conversation that we will be having on Black Talk. And, you know, this is a continuing conversation. And usually with CC webinars, we have an action. Your action is to bring this conversation to your community. You know, you all have a Wendy, you all have an Andre, a Jasmin, a Sherry in your community. And how are you supporting them, not just in the work that they do, but just as people and as neighbors? So with that, a happy, and always Black History Month. A happy Friday, a happy lunchtime. Go and hydrate and eat. And you will be hearing from not just us here at Alaska Center, but folks with the NANEC Diversity and Action Center and NAACP Fairbanks and Anchorage very, very, very soon. So thank you all and have a good Friday.